The views and opinions expressed during Love and Life with Lana and Dave are those only of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or the position of our podcast hosts or affiliates. Any content provided is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. All right, let's do it.
You're listening to Love and Life with Lana and Dave, the podcast where logic is power and you take control. Thank you for tuning in and making the choice to listen in and get ideas for your own love and life. Now, here are your hosts, Lana Williams and David Vaccaro.
How is your late summer 2023 going? Hopefully good. It seems to have gone by fast. There's some crazy weather, lots of rain, and then a ridiculous amount of heat and humidity. Depending on where you are, obviously in different parts of the U.S. anyway, it's been extremely, extremely hot. So up here in New England, where I am, it's not as bad. It was hot and humid for a while, but of course we have no comparison to some stuff that's going on down south. So unfortunately, hopefully everything will even out for everyone. But today, the topic is going to be related to manipulation. And so the official title is going to be Fighting Logic with Manipulation. There's a few reasons I brought this up today. There were a few things that have gone on in this past week that have made me decide that I think I should review this. I know we, in previous podcasts, Dave and I have discussed different ways that people manipulate in other topics. So, of course, this is going to be, what do you call it, a concerted thing where everybody's going to be, the stuff that we discussed before is all going to be compiled into kind of one thing, but I'm going to kind of break this down for you. Basically, the three parts of this are going to be, and be prepared for this to be a two-part episode because I can tell by looking at my notes already that it's going to be pretty extensive. I'm going to try to keep it concise as much as I would love to just go off on a rant. I'm going to try not to do that. But the three different parts of this podcast are going to be, first of all, like what causes, manipulation. What in a person, what in a human being would be the cause, the root cause of the reason why somebody would decide to manipulate you or somebody they don't know or somebody they do know, or of course, it's all going to be situational. So there's so many different types of environments and ways that manipulation happens. Some of it is intentional, some of it is unintentional. And sometimes it really doesn't matter whether it is or not, depending on the outcome of what's happening. So the first part of it's going to be, why does this happen? And then the second part of it is going to be, a litany of what it is that manipulation actually entails. What different types of manipulation are there? Some examples of what they are. And maybe some reasons with each and every thing, or at least with some of them, about why what they might be trying to do in the process of whatever the examples are. And then the final section of this is going to be like, what can you do to fight this, or what can you do to avoid this, or what can you do in response to this? You really don't want to be like an attractive prospect. You want to be a very boring target for somebody who has manipulation in mind. So, starting with part one, I'm going to recommend a book first. There's a book by the name of The Sociopath Next Door, and the author of that book is Martha Stout. I'm recommending that book because there are times where you are being manipulated by somebody that absolutely has no regard for anything but like what they're trying to get. So it seems weird to us. It's very important to understand that I would say we being that I would assume that you're somebody that has human compassion, doesn't like to get hurt, has been manipulated, and doesn't want to be doing that to anyone else, has had a bad experience with it, and realizes overall it's a toxic thing. However, there are people out there walking around that are not capable of compassion or the ability to understand that they're hurting someone or any concern for that sort of thing. They're just, we are chess pieces on a board to some people, and the human element that keeps most human beings from being extremely evil to each other and to other living things. Most of us have that stuff in our brains, and that most of that stuff it's built in or wired into our brains as we develop. But to understand that there are some people out there that really don't have that capability. They just don't have it. It's not rehabilitatable. It's not something that happens for any reason. It's possibly genetic. It's possibly just having to do with a disability, a disorder in the way that the brain develops. But there are people out there that really don't have the checks and balances that are required to keep somebody from really going after someone else and hurting them in an emotional way, in a physical way, and in some cases, where it comes to actually keeping them alive or not. There are some people out there that don't have regard for human life. They just don't. And again, instead of trying to understand it or instead of trying to wish it away, it's better for a lot of us to understand if that's possible and maybe have some checks and balances on our side to kind of see how we can get out of the crosshairs of somebody that has no regard like that. Some of us are going to create a situation where how we respond is almost going to be the entertainment and the reward for somebody like this. So it's good to keep in mind. And anyway, that book is a really good book for people who have dealt with somebody who's just relentless and isn't interested in being a better person, isn't interested in being told that they've hurt somebody. None of that matters. There are some people that really just want to see you suffer and don't care what it does to you. And they're trying, in some quest to get what they want, they will do what they have to do. And it just doesn't matter to them if somebody else is human. There are people who are human, but for some reason cannot stand in the shoes of a human and look at someone and say, well, would I want this done to me? They don't have that ability to project in that way. So that's something that's good to know in general. And just another quick thing that she mentioned in that book is that people who have sociopathic tendencies don't want to be found out. They don't want people to understand if that's how they are. They know they're different from a very young age, and they don't. Well, part of the time they're looking to say, hey, if I do this, I get this result, and it's interesting to them to do it. Like sort of like a science experiment. This is how they treat animals, how they treat children, how they treat other people, whatever. They do have that part of their brain, but also they have a part of their brain that doesn't want them to be found out as different, to the point where they're going to be found out and who knows, taken off the streets, studied, anything like that. They don't want people to be tipped off by this. So they tend to do a whole lot more studying and trying to understand how other human beings act and react to situations based on different things that happen, because they don't have the understanding or the ability to react that way normally. They study other human beings and to see how they should be reacting. And so at the end of the day, when somebody is found out as to be a sociopath, us in our community, our response to that is, I can't understand how this person was so nice and this and that. There's, they had a completely good act going to the point where you did not detect it. And they spend a good amount of their lives doing that. And so by the time you find out whatever it is that you find out about them, you're just so shocked by it, because it's not something you would ever expect from somebody. Generally, it's the quiet person. It's the average person. It's a person that doesn't stand out. And you wouldn't even notice under normal circumstances. But it is a person who has studied human behavior to the point where they are reacting as they should to certain things because they learned how to apply what they've seen us do. So anyway, again, I could go on and on about that book, but if you get a chance to pick it up, it's really enlightening in the sense that there are some people you can't do anything about except to just like get out of their sight and become somebody that they don't find interesting or entertaining or exciting. So that way they stop bothering you. That's really the only thing you can do. Anyway, why? So the why does this happen? Why do people manipulate? So, I come from a childhood where a lot of that went on. And even for us as children, where it shouldn't have been going on from people that were older than us, it was. And we learned kind of quickly sort of how to get under the radar. And I mean, when you're living with somebody who's this way, it's a whole different ballgame than somebody that you maybe work with or you're friends with or even that you're dating, because a lot of times when you're related to someone and living under the same roof as them, you don't have the option to just walk away. A lot of these people are really just people that you need to just disassociate yourself with because it's not worth anything in the long run. Very few people like this, to the extreme anyway, are like worth hanging around and trying to fix. It's not, it's more stress than it's worth. And a lot of these people don't really want the help. They don't really want to get better. They just want people to stop accusing them. They want to be able to go on doing what they're doing without too much interruption. And that's kind of, when you're living with somebody who's a family member that's like this, it's you have to come up with different ways to kind of just fall under the radar and not be targeted, because you can't leave. You have no, especially if you're dependent on parents, elders in some way, aunts, uncles, people that come around and they're not stopped from coming around because of the fact that you're related to them or they're in some way part of your family or your unit that, you know, you can't really get away from. You're being told by your parents you need to deal with these people, or they are your parents or something like that, or a sibling. So part of it is insecurity. Obviously, huge amount of insecurity drives a lot of manipulation. A lot of people feel for some reason that they need to be ranked among human beings as better or worse, or for some reason some people just can't be themselves. They have to constantly compare themselves to everyone else around them. It's not bad to do that if you're looking to be an ambitious person, but some people do that as far as their status and reputation is concerned, how liked they are, how well welcomed they are, how much they fit in, things like that will drive people to become manipulative to try to get some type of status that they don't feel like they can get by being whoever they are on their own. They'll add that. Egoism is a big part of that, and ego dysmorphia that causes that. You know, there are people that think that they are extremely useless and don't have any value and will counteract that with some stuff that they think will make them look better, feel better, seem better to other people. There are also people on the other side of the spectrum that think they're so godlike that there's nobody that should ever tell them otherwise, and they will do things based on that. They will think you are a lesser person, and the manipulation will come from like that as a stem. Emotional instability is also another thing that causes manipulation. Somebody that just cannot regulate their emotions correctly. And instead of saying, hey, I suck at this, it's just almost hand in hand that people like that will point to everyone else and tell everyone else around them that they're causing this issue. I've seen it in that way. And then also, again, like I mentioned earlier, brain dysfunction and chemical imbalance and just the way that your physiology develops, and the fact that sometimes people's brains cannot. There are two parts of the halves of the brain that don't connect. And so the human compassion part of it just doesn't enter into the equation. They don't have the ability to do it. So those are the whys. Those are the general whys. Obviously, there's probably a whole spectrum of other things, but in my opinion, or in my experience, I should say, I don't really know if I want to get into opinion, but based on what I know, based on what I've read, based on people around me and what I've experienced myself, those tend to be the reasons that you would be targeted by somebody that's trying to manipulate. And there's usually some goal they're trying to reach. You know, they're trying to get in good graces with you for something. They're trying to get in good graces with you for someone that they're trying to get close to, and you happen to be connected to that person, or there's some overall reward that they're trying to go for. And generally, I mean, with the exception of the long con, most of those people pretty much they can keep an act up, but not long enough if you leave it sitting that they are completely without fault at letting themselves or exposing themselves in the process as far as like who they really are, if you're looking for the right signals. But those are your whys as far as I'm concerned. Beginning examples of manipulation. All kinds of different ones. So the ones I listed, we've got impatience. Impatience in another person. And I guess I'm impatient in general, but impatient with people is not really something I am. I'm more impatient either with myself, or I'm an efficiency crazy person, so that if things don't happen the first time and I got to do something twice, that's it for me. That's enough to set me off. I'm not impatient with other people so much. Unless, like, I'm really trying to deal with somebody 16 times and this just not happening. Eventually I will get frustrated with people. But impatience in this case, what I mean is somebody's trying to control your responses and you're not responding in the way that they want you to. And they have a very short fuse on how long they're going to wait for you to do whatever it is that they think you're supposed to be doing, or the answer or the response that they are trying to get from you isn't happening. A lot of the easiest examples I can come up with on this are, people that don't like the fact that you don't respond, you don't text back right away quick enough, you don't call back quick enough, you don't, in the blanket statement of, listen, everybody has the time, somebody is like dictating your time and dictating how you should spend your time in regards to them. And don't get me wrong, if somebody's never getting back to you and you're waiting 4 days or this person is consistently not responding to you and they never change that behavior, I can understand you saying, okay, well, my time's kind of valuable and this person's obviously not interested in dealing with me. That's one thing. But if you're upset because somebody's not responding within 30 seconds when they're getting back to you in 5 minutes, and that's a really high extreme thing for you, with the exception of, an emergency, trying to get somebody to, if somebody's going to a hospital or something really serious is happening. But for the most part, if you're just going back and forth with somebody and having a conversation with them, whether it's in person, whether it's on the phone, and that person will flip it, because as you, the victim, you would see this coming from that person. So let's say that you were talking to somebody on the phone, or you're texting with them, or you're talking to them in person, and they're just upset with you because you're not answering them quick enough. That's a sign of manipulation. That's to me, a character flaw of manipulation. That's a control tactic to me. That's, hey, I expect you to be talking back to me within 5 seconds. I want an answer for this. That kind of stuff, where somebody doesn't even let you form an opinion or a thought to come back and tell them something that they asked you. That's control tactic. That's manipulation. And to me, that's the kind of impatience that I'm talking about. Then there's the polite, nice, the return on investment, transactional type manipulation. There are people that will tell you, I'm nice, I did this for you, I was, there's a few different parts underneath here, but let's say the first one is the nice thing. I was nice to you. Where's my reward? Now, most of us are nice to somebody because hopefully that's the way we are. We want to be nice. Some people are not nice back, and that's life. And you can't do anything about that. The only thing you can do is say, well, okay, now I know who I'm dealing with. You can't get mad at yourself for being nice. You can just be mad at yourself for being nice, say, 18 times if that's what you're doing. But for the most part, you can't blame yourself for being a nice person. But the other person may not recognize it, may not have the same way of looking at it as you, and it doesn't make either one of you wrong. It just makes you and that other person maybe not the best match for people to have a conversation or to interact. So you say, okay, well, this person isn't really like me, and talking to this person stresses me out, so do I need to keep doing that? When somebody tells you that they're being nice and they expect you to do X, Y, Z because they were nice, that's manipulation. I don't trust you to give me what I want, and I'm trying to get something from you. And I was nice to you because I want this thing. Maybe they think you should know it. Maybe they have no idea if you know it. But for the most part, if you don't give it back to them the way they want it, they'll tell you straight out that you're not giving them what they want, and they were nice to you and they deserve it. That's manipulation. The polite theory, I've said this recently. This has come up a few times. And it comes up, I belong to a few dating groups where they're posting screenshots of messages that they get from guys. And one of the common themes is that they say this, you say this. There's a script in their head, and I'm calling it a script based on something somebody else mentioned to me one time, because they say I don't follow script. I don't say the thing that people expect me to say to what they say to me, because I don't have a social construct script kind of thing that I follow. It's not my thing. I'm a very curious person, and most of the time my answer to you isn't going to be what you think it is, because I don't know. There are people that have a plan in their head as far as like what they think I'm going to say back, and it doesn't go well. So somebody telling you should be polite. I gave you a compliment. You should be polite back to me. Or I asked you this question. And if you were polite, you would answer this question that I asked you, or you would say this to me and you're not doing it. When you get somebody that does that to you, that's manipulation. Nobody should ever be telling you what kind of manners that you need to have, especially regarding them. I know when you're a kid and you're learning how to be social in the world, you have elders or parents that say to you, oh, this person gave you this thing and you should thank them for that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this is like an adult that breaks conversation and then stops and tells you you're not being polite back in the conversation in the way that I should be getting from you. I said this thing and you should have said this back and you didn't. You're not being nice. You're not being polite. Whatever it is. That kind of thing where they're trying to force you to stay on this on this script that they have in their head that of course you couldn't possibly know is manipulation. Personally, I think those people were kind of, maybe they were raised the wrong way. I don't know, but that kind of attitude to me is a no. I'm not going to deal with somebody very long that's doing that kind of thing. I have no interest in that. I even find it creepy. And I always say, just like in the movie The Lovely Bones, I always think of that. I think of Stanley Tucci's character telling the young girl, you should be polite, always be polite, giving her trying to get up and run because she feels like she's in danger and him screaming at her and telling her she needs to sit down and be polite. I think of that. It's something that overrides your fear. It's something that overrides your, in this particular case in this movie anyway, it was like, hey, she knew she needed to get out of there. She knew she shouldn't have been there. She had a very really bad feeling about what was going on. And his response to that was, oh, you can't just run out of here when you don't want to be here. That's impolite. Like I said, there's something about somebody's character that does that to you that is just like a big no that you don't want to be around. And then return on investment is, I'm doing this in their head. I'm doing this, and I'm supposed to get this. I was nice. I'm supposed to get a date. I'm nice. I was nice. I'm supposed to get a phone number. I was nice. I'm supposed to get sex. Whatever it is that they think they should be getting, they're throwing out enough rope or enough candy or whatever they think they're throwing out to get back the thing that they think they should be getting back. And when you hear about it, it's because you didn't give back this thing that they thought was coming. They'll stop and say, I did this, and I think I should be getting that. Don't you think I should be getting that? Some guys will come right out and tell you, or some women will come right out and tell you, don't you think I should be getting that for this? That's transactional. That's return on investment. No, that's manipulative. And I'm going to bring up the friend zone really quick. And I'm going to say that the friend zone doesn't exist, or if it does, it is an imaginary thing, because most guys that are in the friend zone are not put there purposely. They agree to it, and they agree to it with some kind of future expectation that it is going to be something else. The word friend is a specific thing. It means something that the friend zone just it doesn't define. So if somebody says, well, all right, we'll be friends, you offer them friendship. And if they don't think friendship is possible, or they're trying to get something from you that, they should just be honest about that. A lot of guys will be friends with you, or women. I don't want to say just guys. I'm only using guys because that's my side of the story. But there are people that will be friends with you to get an investment on you in your relationship, whatever it might be, to get leverage to get to the thing that they think they're going to get at some point. It's just the way whether it's intentional or not, it's completely deceptive. And in my opinion, it should be called out, or it should be rectified. Somebody should not be hanging around with you because you have access to something they want, and being a friend with you as a ways to get it. That's manipulative, period. And that's also a transactional thing. I get this, I give this, I get that. And somebody that thinks that makes sense. And the actual friendship of two people being friendship and close and being two human beings that get along, and that doesn't register to them, that's kind of a red flag. Or at least it's a warning sign that you don't really kind of want to hang around somebody that's got that kind of mentality. It's not going to go well. Somebody's going to get upset or hurt, and it's not worth it. The next thing is a dismissive. And what I mean by dismissive is somebody who's trying to, these are all these little things I came up with, vague responses to stuff. And let's say it's somebody that wants to give you, they're trying to give you praise for something because they think you want that praise. I happen to be a curious person. So if you say that something I did or said or wrote or whatever is a good thing or is interesting or exciting, I will ask you why that is. I mean, I don't take a huge umbrella statement and just run with it. I will stop and say, well, which part of the thing, or why did you think it was this way? I'm not calling you out on it. I'm very interested in your opinion. I don't care that people like me. And if they don't like me, I want to be told why. If you're listening to something that I've created or I've written or whatever, and you don't like it, I'm going to want to know why you don't like it, because it's important to me to see how what I'm doing, depending on the project, comes off to people who are reading it or absorbing it on the other side. That's not to say I live and die by what you think of what I did, but I'm interested in the impression it's giving off, it depending on what it is. This podcast is one of them. So an example of that would be somebody who says to me, hey, I listened to your podcast. I thought it was great. And I say to them, of course, because I'm me, oh, what did you like about it? And they say, I like all of it. And I say, well, which part? What do you mean you like all of it? Like what kind of impression did you get from it? Or what did it make you think of? Or was the topic that I talked about something that made sense to you? And they say, yeah, all that. That's dismissive, and that's what I'm talking about. That's that vague. Look, I'm trying to give you a compliment, but I don't really know. I didn't really read it, or I listened to it, or I listened to it, but I didn't really pay attention to it, or I didn't listen to it, and I just want you to think I did. That's manipulative. I honestly don't even know why somebody would do that. I find a lot of stuff like that to be a waste of time. But some people think maybe because of the way they social graces they were taught that they're supposed to say something like that. And they don't actually know. And, going back to dating, I have a profile, not anymore, but when I did have profiles on dating, because I've decided I'm done with apps, they're ridiculous outside of the entertainment of it all. And somebody says, hey, I really liked your profile. My first question, of course, is what did you like about it? I'm not going to say, oh, hey, thanks. I'm going to ask you what you mean by that. There's no way I'm not going to ask you for details on that. That's just my personality, right? So most of them would say, oh, I liked all of it. I liked everything you said. And it's kind of like, yeah, but what about everything I said did you like? And they never really have any detailed information. They just don't. They assumed you were just going to take that and run with it and never ask them about anything about details. And they end up in a corner where they don't have any details. And so it's like, even if you have to go read the thing and come back and answer my question, that would be the smart thing to do. But a lot of people don't do that. They'll just keep throwing back vague answers at me, hoping I stop asking. Anyway, then there's gaslighting. Now, we all know what gaslighting means. Gaslighting has become a very big, trendy phrase to use. So a lot of people do use it for, I think, things that it's a catchphrase. So I don't think every time it's being used these days, it's actually accurate that the situation I'm talking about is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a thing. I'm going to refer to my own childhood and say that my mom and I went through some stuff, and I learned at a young age not to really get into a conversation with my mother about anything or agree to anything or have her agree to anything without like a third person present. Because what my mother would do is change the story. If it was me and her in a room and her and I had a conversation, inevitably that conversation would change over time to suit whatever she wanted, leverage-wise or whatever she wanted at the moment. So she would tell me that I could have something, and then later on she'd say, I never told you that. I don't know where you got that from, like that kind of thing. Like I just didn't hear it, or I heard it wrong, or it was me that was misconstruing what she said. So I learned like very young. Before I was 10, I learned to not even have these kind of conversations with my mother without somebody else standing there, because it was useless to have any kind of conversation where the two of us had a verbal agreement on anything. Sometimes she was okay with it. For the most part, though, it would be, oh, I never really said that to you. I don't know. I didn't actually say that, And as a kid, that's tough. So I just learned, okay, well, it's not, it's more stress than it's worth to like get into any kind of verbal contract or agreement or discussion about anything I should be doing or not doing when it's just her and I in the room. And I will say that probably when I was 7 years old, I learned not to ask for anything because everything I asked for, and we'll go back to the transactional thing, was definitely leverage for her to get something from me. And so if I didn't want to do something, didn't want to do chores, I don't care what it was, give her something, whatever. Something I asked for would always come up as a leverage point for her to say, well, you asked for this and I gave it to you. So I'd stop asking. I'd be like, okay, well, I didn't realize that when I asked for something, all this was going to come with it. So I now no longer want anything from you ever. And that would be how it was. That way, when she gave me stuff, I could say, well, I didn't ask for this. You can't use that against me. Anyway, at 7, I learned that. The next thing is info dumping. Now, info dumping can be, most of the time that I see info dumping, I don't really necessarily think that it's a purposeful manipulation as so much as that it's like a character trait, right? If you're telling me, there are people that will come along and it's so adjacent to mansplaining. If somebody comes along and starts telling me all about some subject and what I should know about it and whatever, sometimes that's fascinating to me. Other times, it's a method of superiority or almost a method of condescension. I guess the conditions for me are did I ask you for the information? Is it solicited? And are you somebody that knows enough to give me information that's useful? There are people that have, over the years, explained to me about stuff that I already knew about and never stopped to say, hey, did you want to know this? Or did you not know this? Or whatever. And I do think sometimes info dumping is like I said, it's a character thing. It's part of your personality where you just kind of skip a beat and your brain just dumps out a bunch of information and it's not really related to anybody that's there except that they're listening to you. I don't think that if it is manipulative, a lot of times I don't think it's purposeful. It's just something where, I don't know, you want somebody to know that you know things, and that's fine. But sometimes it's done in a way where somebody's trying to let you know that I don't want to say I would know it all, but they just know a lot of things. And sometimes the situation you're in doesn't really call for that. And you're not really even asking for that, or it's not even related to what's happening, or you're being told that despite the fact that you're probably an expert on it, you have a degree in it, you work, in a field where you know about it. Somebody coming up and telling you all about something that you already know. Like I said, I don't want to point to that as a really toxic thing. It isn't, but it is to some degree a manipulation. And maybe it's just that they want you to think that they're smart. I don't know. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is an indirect or involuntary sometimes form of manipulation. The next thing is compliments or other gratuities to get leverage. And that's somebody saying to you, hey, beautiful. They throw a couple compliments at you and then say, okay, I've given you the obligatory 2 compliment minimum. And so therefore, I want you to give me whatever. I want you to talk to me. I want you to give me 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes of your time. Whatever it is that they're looking for from you, they think that you owe them based on the fact that they throw out compliments. I'm going to throw love bombing in here because love bombing is definitely connected to this, and that if you meet somebody that starts to talk to you, like if they're throwing tons of compliments at you and trying to get you almost high on their admiration for you, and it's all kind of, if it seems kind of out of place and over the top and based on almost nothing, that's love bombing. And there are people that respond to that. I'm cynical, so if you try to give me anything that I'm not looking for, I'm immediately going to be suspicious as to why you're doing it. So that's how I respond to it. But there are people who really love compliments and praise, and there are people out there that seek it. I mean, this causes, a dopamine rush, a serotonin rush to them, and they will respond to that. So, I would just say, if you do run into somebody or you start talking to somebody that really barely knows you and you're getting all kinds of compliments about how beautiful you are, how smart you are, and they start telling you how, they want to, get involved with you and all, whatever it is. They start talking about stuff that doesn't really make sense it doesn't make sense because of the fact that you barely know them. That is definitely something to watch out for. That's a manipulative tactic. And I would say this, I know a lot of people aren't probably going to be programmed to do this, but when you're starting to really lean towards somebody, almost in any situation, it doesn't mean that they're not good, they're good or bad, but if anytime that you start to lose control of yourself around someone else and you start to kind of lean towards them in a big way, it's just good at that point to stop and check yourself and say, okay, wait a minute. I'm really into this person, especially if you feel like things are happening way too fast. If ever you feel like that lack of control, like you're on some kind of a ride at a carnival, I would put the brakes on and I would get away from that person for long enough to just kind of look at the whole situation and say, okay, how normal is this for how much I've known this person? Does this make any sense? If it doesn't make sense to me, whether I want it or not, whether at the end of the day I want the Cinderella, I want the prince to show up, or if you're a guy, whether you're heterosexual, homosexual, whatever the case may be, when somebody comes up to you that looks like the perfect thing and they're telling you everything you want to hear and it's just way, way, way too perfect, I would implore you to just kind of do a double check on that. Just do a double check on that. Find out who they are. Tell them, hey, there's no need. Let's slow this down. There's just no need for us to go at lightning speed like this. I happen to be somebody that likes to lean on my critical thinking. I like to have all the facts. And this is, I barely know what shoe size you are. And this is a little bit too fast for me. So let's slow the roll. And I can still spend time with you. I can still talk to you and all that kind of stuff. But we don't necessarily need to get married tomorrow or move in together tomorrow or whatever it is. Have sex in 10 minutes or whatever it is that they're trying to get from you that's rolled up into this love bombing fest that you're getting thrown at you. It's never a bad idea to stop and double check somebody. And I will say this, if they try to tell you that you're difficult or they try to tell you they're getting their feelings hurt by you doing this, I don't want to slow down. You're hurting my feelings. Anything like that where they're trying to tell you that emotionally you're causing some kind of problem. That's just more manipulation on top of what they're already doing. And my rule, there are two rules, really major rules when you're dating or dealing with friendships or even people that you work with or whatever that I like to follow. And one of them is if you don't feel comfortable or safe and somebody's really trying to get to know you and really wants to be around you, they should, and I know we hate the word should, but in this case, I think it's warranted. They should want you to feel comfortable, to feel safe, to feel at ease. They should want that for you. And, almost whatever it takes for you to feel that way should be okay with them. And so if you feel like, hey, listen, I need to feel comfortable here. I need to feel like I've spent time doing this. I need to kind of back up and slow down because it'll make me feel better. If somebody gives you a hard time because you're trying to feel safe and you're trying to feel at ease and you're trying to feel comfortable and they don't like the fact that you're doing that, I would say just discard that person. You want somebody in your life that cares if you're comfortable. You want somebody in your life that cares if you feel safe. That stuff should be stuff that somebody that really wants to be with you and really likes you would want you to have. Period. And if they don't, I don't really care what the reasoning is for that. If they don't, then they're either not a fully enough enlightened, developed person to deal with, or they don't care about your well-being, and neither one of those things is really any good. The other thing, and a lot of my podcast today is going to circle around this, is the word inconsistency. If somebody is being inconsistent, by the way, it's actually kind of a theory that unstable ground and instability for some people is a trauma bond. There are people that know that it will cause you to bond in a certain way by doing things like this. Some people are aware of it and use it as a tactic. Other people are unaware of it, but they know it works. If you have constant inconsistency going on and you know where you stand constantly with somebody, get away from them. It doesn't make any sense. I don't care who they are. I don't care why you're with them. Unless you enjoy inconsistency. Most people hate it. Most people want some idea what's going on. They want some kind of, spontaneity is one thing, but inconsistency is ridiculous. So if somebody, is yelling at you one day and insulting you and the next day telling you that you're the best thing since sliced bread and then the next day you don't hear from them and then the next day they're insulting you, that's nonsense to me. It almost doesn't even really matter why they're doing it. They're either an extremely unhealthy person in how they deal with everybody, which means that you're going to be a liability at some point anyway. They're going to hurt you or something's going to happen that's going to cause you some pain at some point down the line. Or they're doing it because throwing you off balance makes you easier to manipulate, makes you easier to get in a position where they can get what they want from you. So those two things are major. If somebody really doesn't care how you feel or what you want or whether you feel comfortable, that's a no to me. And a lot of inconsistency is also a no. In the beginning, you can say, hey, what the heck is going on here? And if it straightens out, it straightens out. But if you're dealing with somebody who's just, no matter what they say, they become inconsistent as a pattern, I would scrap it. To me, that's not worth it. Doesn't make any sense to me. So complaints and other gratuities is the last thing I said. And then humiliation, somebody who publicly humiliates you to get you to feel like you are less than them, to get you in a position where I would say that bullying and cyberbullying, things like that, that's a public humility kind of manipulation. And it's obviously absolutely horrible for kids, but we were all on the playground and we all dealt with it. It was horrible. Kids are young and they're stupid, but for the most part, that's what I'm saying. That stuff does some damage, and it makes you feel bad, and it does sit with you for a long time, and it does drop your self-esteem. It does erode your self-esteem. And on the playground, or as an adult, that stuff is there should just be no reason we put up with something like that from someone else. It's just like, oh, okay. Yeah, if you're going to insult me or you're going to humiliate me to make in front of a large bunch of people to knock me down so that you feel better, that's not a train I want to get on. That's not a hill I want to die on, or whatever you want to call it. I'm all set with something like that, and the reason why is not, it's because that's really immature behavior. As a kid on the playground, it's still horrible, but at least as a kid, you kind of don't know better, so you can at least give them the benefit of the doubt for being young and not having enough tools to know that that's wrong. But as you get older, if somebody's in their 40s and 50s doing that, those are some old spots. You're not changing those, or, you know what I mean? I don't think people like that really want to change. And I'm bringing up trauma dumping. Now, that's the next one. And as I suspected, this was going to go for a little while. So I will stop at this one. But trauma dumping it's deprecation. It's attempting for pity. So somebody that's telling you, oh, I'll never have what I want, or nobody likes me, just things to get you to almost give them attention because you feel bad. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to do. There's a phrase, all attention is good attention. And this is going to speak to that all attention is good attention means some people don't care if they get negative attention. They don't care how people look at them as long as they're getting looked at. They don't care if people think they're jerks. They don't care if people think they're losers. They don't care what it is that people think. As long as people are paying attention to them in any way, shape, or form, they'll take it. And that's what this is. Trauma dumping is, and again, bringing up dating, there's several profiles where people will go on and on and on about how they can't get a date. Nobody wants to date them. Everybody sucks. Their whole life sucks. They're not cute enough. They don't have enough money. They're not tall enough, whatever. And all of that is like their introduction to some potential date. And you think to yourself, this is their opener. Like, this is the first thing they say to anybody coming their way. Like this, you almost have to ask yourself, does this work? Is this some kind of, it's a sick, perverted, like sort of attempt at like reverse psychology, where they're trying to get people to say, oh, no, you're not this, you're not that. I mean, that's okay. But after a while that gets old. And that's not really any reason to date another person. That's not really, to me, going to be a healthy bond or relationship at any point. Even if somebody does think that you feel bad for yourself when they feel bad and they want to help you, I mean, it's only going to last once or twice before they stop talking to you. It's not going to be a constant act that anybody's going to want to put up with. That's a job. So yeah. Wrapping up the podcast with part 1 of Fighting Manipulation with Logic. See you next week. Before I go, www.laneanddave.com. That's our website, and that's where all of our podcasts are. And of course, Dave is not with us this week, but will be with us soon. We're on our summer break, and we're dealing with a lot of major stuff, but we'll be back on track soon enough. So we'll see you soon for part 2. Hey, you just listened to Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share the podcast, leave us a comment or review, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We'll see you soon.